NECA's dealing with invaders from Flaganon. Here's your look at the new NECA toys, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, Wingnut, and Screwloose. Wingnut and Screwloose appear in the episode Zack and the Alien Invaders, and try to infiltrate and take over the Earth with their mind changer, disguised as leaders for the Teen Hut Military Academy. They use robotic cockroaches. However, their plans are revealed by Zack, and at the end, Wingnut and Screwloose are defeated by the Turtles and Zack. Following their defeat, Wingnut and Screwloose leave Earth in their spacecraft and return back to Flaganon. Before we get a closer look at Wingnut and Screwloose, let me first thank the folks over at NECA Toys that provided the samples of Wingnut and Screwloose that we could have a look at in this review. Second of all, it probably would be helpful for you guys to know how tall these figures stand. We'll do some comparisons in a second, but let me first grab my ruler. My good old trusty ruler. We're going to bring this in and we're going to measure off. Now for Wingnut, you could either measure to the tops of his ears or the tops of his wings. His wings will make him a taller figure. If we go to, say, the tops of his ears, then the figure's at about 7 inches or about 18 centimeters tall. If, however, though, we want to go to the tops of his wings, well, then the figure's almost about 7.5 inches or 19 centimeters tall. We can then move over to Screwloose, who's about 2/3 the size of Wingnut. I'm going to put, again, the ruler up to the top of his head. He's about a 5.25 inch tall figure, or about 13.5 centimeters tall. Then we can bring in a couple of turtle figures for some size comparisons. Here they are next to Michelangelo. I always seem to like bringing Michelangelo in. You know, Screwloose, who seemed like a small figure initially, when you're comparing him to a likes of a regular turtle, Michelangelo isn't that much taller. He's only about maybe half a head taller and goes to about the shoulder on Wingnut. We can also bring in some of the other figures. Here they are next to Muckman and Joe Eyeball, a great set released by NECA Toys. Now, Wingnut, if you count really his ears, are about the same height as Muckman and a similar sized build, although he's a little portlier in the belly. We can also bring in some of the recently looked at figures. Here he is next to Dirtbag and Ground Chuck. Again, when you're looking at it, unfortunately, poor Screwloose gets dwarfed in size. Let's just move everything over just a little bit so you can still see him. Yeah, I mean, Wingnut is a pretty big figure, and he's roughly, again, about the same size as Muckman. He's almost about the same size, I guess, as Ground Chuck, two figures we looked at earlier here on this channel. As for the rest of the figure's accessories, Screwloose comes included with an adjustable flight stand. Why I say it's designed for Screwloose is you'll see in a second, that waist clip, as adjustable as it may be, will only really fit around Screwloose's body. There's no way it's going to fit around Wingnut's oversized body. Sorry, Wingnut, I'm drawing everyone's attention to your oversized body. Having a look, though, at the adjustable flight stand, though, it's the same stand that NECA did release years ago, I think as a 3-pack. I might even still have one of those packs upstairs I've yet to open, because most of the time I usually just display my figures standing on a shelf, kind of like what you're seeing right now. But if you did want to have Screwloose in a flight pose, then yeah, you do get yourself an adjustable stand that can go along with that. Some assembly was required. I'd have to take this part of the adjustable neck and snap it into the grooves located down below on the actual clear base. From there, it actually has some adjustability. There's an adjustable knuckle here. You can adjust it here. And of course, there's the waist clip. And even at its furthest reach, no way is that going to fit around Wingnut. Sorry, Wingnut, I'm drawing everyone's attention again to your oversized body. But yeah, it does fit around Screwloose fine. We'll show you guys that in a second. I noticed that the screw was really tight here, but I would rather a tighter joint than an actual super loose joint. And it does have adjustability here on the side. You can run the track up and down. The only thing about it, I've noticed, it's really tight. May have even been the problem I noticed with the original flight stands too. And to get it through the track like this, half the time it usually deploys out the waist clip like this. Let's just take this off for the time being. And then to get it back down here, I find you almost kind of have to wiggle it back and forth. I mean, really where it is at its neutral position is more than enough. And really, if you're going to have them displayed alongside Wingnut, I think that's kind of really, again, the proper height. Again, you can always just move this up and down. Worst comes to worst. One thing about actually removing this one thing reminds me too, is while putting this in place, I don't think they've done anything different from the original flight stands. When you do put the waist clip in, it attaches to what almost looks to be like a hexagonal peg here. Not a display stand, but a peg. Because it's not round, when you are putting this in, it can't go straight. It can't go leveled like this. It either has to go on this angle or it has to go on this angle. There doesn't seem to be anything in the middle, as you can see right here. I wish that this could have been round, so at least if you wanted to, you can then rotate the display stand when, of course, you've got Screwloose attached to it. If they had made it circle, maybe they were running the issues that it may have been too loose and it could have spun around while the figure's in place. I mean, it does lock things in place, but I wish it was flat. So again, you can adjust it. Anyways, let's go ahead and take ourselves Screwloose, and we'll just fit this around his body. You can have it in a couple of places, really. Let's just make sure it's wide enough here. This fits either here, or I guess if you wanted to, you can also fit it around in between his arms too. But it seems like the best place is just right around his waist. Clamp things shut. And without really adjusting the back section here, and I'm just going to put this right next to Wingnut. Yeah, you know, I think that's a good height. I wouldn't really bring that any higher than what it is right now. It looks good. And again, if you did want to display Screwloose flying, because after all, he is a mosquito, I think it's nice the fact that they did include a display stand like that. Seeing as we already had a look at his display stand, we might as well have a look at Screwloose now. Much needed upgrade from the original one that we got from Playmates back in the day. Wingnut and Screwloose were released as a 2-pack by Playmates, although I wouldn't really consider it a 2-pack. Wingnut was fully articulated, or as articulated as a Playmates toy would be back in the day, but unfortunately Screwloose was relegated to only being an accessory. He was molded and all in yellow plastic. I don't even think he had painting. He certainly didn't have any posability going for him. He was basically just an accessory piece to Wingnut. That's not the case at all when we get the one from NECA Toys here. A fully realized, fully painted, and fully articulated version of the mosquito here. Although while looking at it, if you ignore the back stinger here, and you maybe ignore the fact he's got the pointed nose, I don't know why it reminds me of that honeybee mascot from Cheerios, although he didn't have the multiple arms like this. The detail on the figure is fantastic. It definitely looks like Screwloose from that episode of Tmnt, and he's fully painted and fully articulated. And certainly a far cry from, again, the one that we got from Playmates Toys. This one does have the articulated wings, which was a nice touch as well. Even if they had just kept the wings molded, say, like this, and didn't have any posability, I would have been fine for all the other stuff that we actually get from this figure. The coloring is nice, vibrant, and very bright on the yellow that they've used. Even the areas around his teeth and the eyes, very bright and white, are outlined nicely in the additional black panel lining. It really does help to make this character look like he's pulled from the cartoon episode. There's some additional green that's been added down to the figure's stomach as well, not to mention some additional green on the sides of his arms as well, and not to mention as well, he's got the big giant stinger on the back of his tail. Would a mosquito still have a stinger? It would have to be the thing that's drawing the blood out, the thing that it feeds on. I think it feeds its children. I'm spending too much time talking about mosquitoes. Mosquitoes are gross, disgusting little vermin, but it's really certainly nice to get ourselves a mosquito that I don't mind actually having on my shelf. When it comes to the posability on Screwloose, we'll have a look at that right now. The head sculpt rotates all the way around. It's on a ball joint. I did notice that the ball joint was a tad tight taking it out of the packaging, but the more time I'm doing this, and the more time I'm doing this certainly in the video as well, it loosens it up nicely. It does go up and down. You can also rock it back and forth. A little creaking, a little squeaking, but at least it'll get the job done. You can rotate it all the way around. Each of the individual arms, now this was a nice touch, each of the individual arms do have hinge joints. Hinge joints are a tad tight, so I might actually go in there with a hairdryer. That's the sound of a hairdryer, by the way. Might take a few passes just to soften up those joints a little bit, but there's hinge joints where you can move those arms forward and back, and you can rotate them all the way around. The elbows as well, and that's also in all the cases of the hands too. It's not just, I don't want to spend so much time thinking that this is my favorite child. All the arms actually have the same posability. Hinge joint elbows, the arms also rotate back and forth, and each of the hands also rotate all the way around. Screwloose, unlike Wingnut, doesn't come with any additional hands. I guess they really could have included some additional hands. I mean, I'm fine for really the hands that he comes included with, although the hands really look like they should be gripping and holding onto a weapon. Although, like I said, Screwloose, other than just the flight stand, doesn't include anything else with the figure. Anyways, for the rest of the figure's articulation, wings go back and forth. And you can also rotate these as well. It really reminds me of like the Baxter Stockmans that we have also gotten before. There's tail articulation, so you can rotate that all the way around. I guess if you want to have the... Again, I don't know if you would still consider it, I guess it's not a stinger, but the thing on the back of the mosquito, that does rotate all the way around. And the legs give you as splits. You can move those out, forward and back this way. The figure has knee articulation, which also allows the lower leg to rotate. And the feet also move up and down, and there's also an ankle pivot. So again, like really nice to see that this guy gets fully realized with a fully articulated figure. a far cry again from the one that we got from the Playmates release, who again was basically just like a yellow accessory piece to go along with Wingnut. On to Wingnut now and his accessories. First of all, the figure comes included with his gun. It's too good of a gun to be stored away in the accessory drawer, or if you put your figure accessories back into the plastic tray that comes included with the figures. No way, no how. If there ever be a time I decide not to display Wingnut with this gun is going to get lent over, I think, to another turtle figure instead. Maybe a Rocksteady or a Bebop. It's molded nicely in a dark gunmetal gray with some additional blue-based gray there on the side with a couple of buttons and knobs there. It's outlined as well, some additional black, and some black gets afforded to the handle as well as the trigger. Things you will want to be careful of when it comes to the gun is this part right here, the little scope that sits above the barrel. It really only sits by this little ledge of plastic right here, and because of the nature of the plastic that they've used, if you accidentally put your hand, oh no, if you put your hand on that to try to fit this into his hand, that most likely will snap. So you just want to be careful of this when you're putting it into his hands. Speaking of hands, right now the figure currently has boring closed fists in the sockets of his forearms. That's not going to do much when it comes to holding the gun. At least they include some extra hands. Let's have a look at those right now. Starting first, Wingnut comes included with some grabbing hands, or relaxed hands as well. It seems like he's wearing fingerless gloves. Everybody was wearing fingerless gloves, but anyone know what song that comes from? Let me know down below in the comments section. Nice use of blue that they've also used for the fingerless gloves. You can see as well, each one of the fingernails gets afforded some additional black outlining the bottom of it, again making it really look like its animated counterpart. I don't know if I would necessarily use these hands, but these will go back in the plastic tray, not the gun though. If you do want to display the gun in his hands, of course you're going to want to use proper hands for the job. He does come also with some grabbing or gripping hands for the gun. One of the hands, or I guess both the hands, kind of look like they have trigger fingers. Again, best suited for holding the gun, and to change out the hands, by the way, super easy on the figure. I don't know if it's just me, but I've noticed the kind of plastic that they've been using lately for their figure releases seems a little bit more user-friendly. First of all, it's a lot easier to take the pegs and remove them from the sockets, although, yeah, there's going to be a little bit of paint. I probably have had a little bit of paint flaking off a couple of times already in this review. But I have noticed also like the density of the plastic. It's a little harder to probably show you guys this in camera, but the fingers are very soft and more pliable. Again, a lot more user-friendly. Just go ahead and pop the hand in the socket that we want to use. We're going to just leave this hand off for the time being. We're going to go ahead and then take the gun. Again, being careful of that scope. You don't want to break that off by mistake. And we're going to kind of just fit that into his hand. One of the other things you can also do too, I'm going to put the figure down here for a second. If it helps you at all, take the hand out first. Get the gun into his hand like that. And once everything then is lined up, then go ahead and put the hand back in the socket. Oh, that was a lot easier. And you can see he's holding the gun. Now, he does have, I think, the means to hold it in both the hands. I will tell you right off the bat, though, he does have these joints in his elbows, 2 joints on both sides. The joints, I've noticed, are really tight in this figure. I'm going to probably have to take, again, that hairdryer. Such a horrible impression of a hairdryer. And soften that up, but think a little bit to bend the elbow properly. But at least for the time being, he does have the gun in his hand. It's a little on the heavier side. It's a little bit more weight for the hand to bear, but at least he does have the means to hold the gun into his hands. Like that. Oh, it's such a cool looking gun. Let's go ahead now and take that out of his hand. Just going to put it to the side for the time being, because of course we want to look at the rest of the figure. I love the look of Wingnut. I'm trying to recall, actually, if I had Wingnut, the original Playmates one, when I was a kid. I was kind of the kid that was collecting the more obscure characters. So instead of getting initially, I wasn't the kid that got Krang, I think, right away. But I was getting like Slash, and I think I may have got Wingnut, and I may have even got Muckman. I think Muckman was one of the early releases as well. But I was kind of getting into the later figures as well. So picking up characters like Wingnut here, for example, I seem to vividly remember having this figure, although it certainly wasn't as good as the one that we're getting here from NECA Toys. And certainly, Screwloose was a far cry from the Screwloose that we're getting here from NECA. Now, the detail on this guy is fantastic. Again, saying fantastic in this review. I mean, the paintwork on the face just alone, the coloring that they've done to the teeth, yeah, there's a little bit of white, unfortunately, right at the top of his 2 front teeth here. You can see a little bit of the white bleed. But the head sculpt is really good on this one. Very long ears, of course, like he had in the episode. The long snout area of his nose as well. And some additional black lining does go a long way to really make this feel alive and give it a lot of extra additional personality. The thing about Wingnut that's cool, that I always really liked about the character, is the fact he has these mechanized wings. The wings basically are built around his existing wings, and give them some additional lift, as well as some jet propulsion down below. I like the way that they've replicated it here on the figure, again outlining the little riveted areas, the bolts that would have again built the wings around his existing wings. Again, it looks like the cartoon counterpart. I was surprised to find like the wings aren't super heavy either. I thought maybe if they were adding all this additional framework over top of his existing wings, that it would make the joints really super loose, or that the wings would drop or get loose. So far, so good. They're not too bad. A little on the loose side. But if they ever develop too loose of a problem, I can probably either go in there and maybe spray some additional floor polish to tighten up that joint a little bit, or maybe add a little bit of nail polish. But so far, like I said, it's not too bad. He's a fuller looking figure. I don't think, again, they're probably going to be able to use this body for anything else. He does have, again, the utility belt here on the side with the bat on the front. That's a nice little touch. And a few little pockets on the sides as well. Not to mention a little tiny tail on the bottom there as well. The tail, by the way, isn't articulated. Someone right now is like, oh, tail's not articulated. Sorry, tails. Not everything on these figures have to be articulated. He does have a couple little belts, thigh belts on the sides of either one of his legs. And he does have his toes sticking out of the bottoms of his boots. Again, he's a really interesting looking design character. Kind of goes with that later seasons of Ninja Turtles where we got the more obscure looking characters, but definitely does work really well for Wingnut here. Okay, let's talk about the figure's articulation. So the head is on a ball joint, so it rotates. Well, first of all, he's got two ball joints. He has one in the head, so that already allows the head to go up and down this way. You can also rock the head this way as well. But then the figure also has a secondary ball joint. How about that? Just at the base of the neck. It allows the neck to go up and down this way, and the neck can also independently move on its own. So Wingnut actually gets afforded not one, but two ball joints in just his neck alone. As for the arms, now the arms can move forward and back. When it comes to bringing the arms out, though, I find I can't get them past 45 degrees or 45 degrees this way, out this way. I don't know if some of it has something to do with his shoulders, although his shoulders seem pretty soft and plastic anyways. Maybe it's just the way that the joints are just super tight, or maybe that's the extent of what they actually can pull off. But I can only get them at about 45. I can bring the arms down just a little bit, but the arms seem a little more tight and unwilling to move. You can move the arms forward and back this way, fine and good. And the figure does have double hinges on the elbows. There's a hinge right there. It's a little harder to see. It's tucked underneath the glove. And then he's got a more obvious one to see, a little hinge joint right there. So it does have a double bend in the elbow. The hand also rotates as well. And, well, I guess the top of the glove rotates. And the hands also independently rotate all the way around as well. And there's a hinge joint there as well. Upper torso now is in a ball joint. The figure seemed almost as if he had a waist swivel, but I think it's just the way it's kind of fooling my eyes, the way they've panel lined this section right here. It almost looks like he has a waist swivel, but I don't think he does. Just more an upper torso ball joint. Then for the legs split out. You can go forward with the back with the legs, back with the legs. There's also a single hinge on the knee, which a little on the tight side, little on the tight side. There we go, just a little bit there. And the figure does have also toe articulation or foot articulation. You can move it back and forth this way, and you can also move the feet up and down this way as well. I was really surprised, again, for a figure this size with this much density, that he actually does have as much posability as he does. Does he have issues being slightly back heavy with his wings? Just a little bit, but not as bad as I thought it would be the case. The fact that we actually get ourselves Wingnut and Screwloose as two fully painted, fully detailed, and fully articulated figures, nice touch again on NECA's part. Because again, if you had the original Wingnut and Screwloose, which I think I did, the original Screwloose was basically just like, it was molded yellow plastic. I mean, it looked like a mosquito. You had to kind of look from a distance and squint. But at least in this case, with Wingnut and Screwloose from NECA Toys, you're getting fully realized figures that you can have on display with the rest of your turtle collection. As a kid, I may have loved watching the Tmnt 80s cartoons Saturday mornings, but because the series ran as long as it did with as many episodes as it did, some of the later run seasons that would feature the likes of Wingnut, Screwloose, Groundchuck, Dirtbag, and even Chrome Dome are a little grayer in our memories. Sometimes what's funny is when you talk to other collectors, they actually remember these figures actually more on the original Playmates releases long before they remember the episodes that the characters would appear in. I think that's a similar circumstance here with Wingnut and Screwloose. I don't very vividly remember the episode that they appear in. I had to go back and rewatch it as a refresher, but I could certainly tell you all about the Playmates release of Wingnut that came included with Screwloose, because he was just a little tiny miniature. He was just like a little accessory piece to Wingnut. He really wasn't his own figure, until of course the one that we get here from NECA Toys. A fully realized Screwloose, just as articulated, as detailed as the oversized Wingnut he comes included with. The figures don't have as many accessories as maybe some of the other 2-packs that we've gotten before, but just the amount of plastic that they've put into Wingnut alone, I think, is the price of admission. The figure comes included with a blaster. As you can see, you have in one of his hand. Pictured here on the back of the package, he's actually got it wielded in both of his hands, which is something I am going to try. I've already tried to wiggle the elbow just a little bit, but it's really tight. I'm going to see if I can take a hairdryer, soften up the plastic just a little bit to get those elbows bent, but at least he does hold the gun in his one hand for the time being. In case you are also curious, in this review, I did mention that Wingnut's tail wasn't articulated. In actual fact, it does. It has a little hinge joint on the back. Great looking figures, though. Again, not characters I recognized right away from the original episode of Tmnt, but certainly going back and watching again, I remember that episode. It's like, oh yeah, I remember that. The robotic cockroaches. I really wish these guys could have come included with cockroaches, but nonetheless, though, a great set release of both Wingnut and Screwloose, a finally fully articulated Screwloose. A big thank you, those are the folks over at NECA Toys that provided the sample of the Tmnt Wingnut and Screwloose. Have you picked up this set for yourself? If you have, let me know down below in the comment section. And is there ever a case of figures being released by NECA that you don't remember from being in an episode of the cartoon of Tmnt, but you actually remember before as a Playmates figure? If that's the case, let me know down below in the comment section what figure it was. Also, if you guys are new to this channel, you're enjoying the content that you're seeing, make sure you hit that subscribe button down below, turn on the bell notification, and keep your peepers peeled, because there will be more NECA reviews lined up and coming your way. As always, guys, thanks for watching. See you guys next time.